Hello and welcome to Destination Draft Day, your one spot for all things NFL Draft, NFL talk, college football, anything that you could ever want regarding the wonderful game of football. We're here for you. Michael Rochman here, myself, and Nick Durst joining me. We are very excited to talk about this past weekend of football. There was just so much going on. Leave your comments in the comment section. Let us know if you have anything that you want us to talk about. We are more than happy to do so. We are pushing back the offseason blueprints because of the crazy weekend of football, though. But before we dive into anything, Nick Durst, how you doing?
Michael, I'm just really shocked. It was a very shocking weekend. Didn't expect much of that. The only thing that really didn't surprise me would be the Bengals winning because I felt like they had a shot to win. All the other results really surprised me.
Yeah, and, when it comes to that game, Tennessee Derrick Henry didn't look healthy, and they needed to go to Foreman because that just was not working. Giving the ball to Henry, especially with how much they wanted him involved in that offense, it wasn't working. Henry looked slow. He looked sluggish. He wasn't breaking tackles like he usually does, and that resulted in a lot of chaos for the Tennessee play calling. Obviously, Cincinnati looks great. Their passing offense looks very good, and they probably are super excited to get the chance to beat Kansas City again. But I think it's going to be a very good AFC matchup in that one. So, just in terms of Tennessee, going forward, this feels like a team that you run it back with, right? Or do you think that they need some changes in order to truly contend?
This is a team that I just feel like is always going to be they're going to win the division, but I never really feel like they have a true chance to get to the Super Bowl. I guess the only thing I would say that they could kind of have to improve on is need to get a big time, defensive line or something because I know they beat the Bengals. They lost to the Bengals. They sacked Burrow 9 times, but that was an anomaly. I guess you really just got to plan to because you're going to be going after Allen and Mahomes next year, so you really got to just kind of plan to stop them somehow. I guess you could add another receiver, but Brown and Jones both had good games, so I'm not really sure what you could do.
Yeah, this is a team that really impressed all season. They were able to win games despite being shorthanded in terms of injuries and everything going on for their team. But I think maybe that this is a team that you almost have to run it back with. I think the offensive line could improve. It wasn't up to the standard that they usually were. I don't know what the issue was. I thought they were going to be fine, and things just didn't work out on the offensive line in terms of pass protection. I think Derrick Henry needs to be fully healthy, whether that means you're continuing to put the offense kind of on his shoulders or if you're kind of limiting his overall production and touches until you get to that playoff run. Look, Derrick Henry is the identity of this team. No matter how good defensively they are, no matter who they add in the passing game, Derrick Henry is going to be the bread and butter that makes this train really kind of go. And that's what happened in this game, why they lost. And I think healthy, 100% healthy, or at least a lot more healthier than he was in this past game, there's an opportunity for Tennessee to potentially be playing in this AFC Championship. But I think right now, my big question mark is Tannehill really going to be the QB that puts you over the top? And I know that there's teams like the 49ers who are there with Jimmy Garoppolo, and you could argue with his performance, he wasn't necessarily putting them over the top. But I don't think the Titans are as well built and as well schematically playing that as the 49ers. So there's still a lot of question marks for this Titans team in terms of the long-term future. I do think, though, that it would be foolish to do anything drastic other than, just trying to reload, retool, and really trying to get back to this position and hopefully get a little bit further next year.
Yeah, and they just ran into who was going to be the next best kicker in the league, and that's McPherson, who was just incredible, and he's been money.
Yeah, he was absolutely stellar looking at the next game, this is one that seemed rather in control for a large part of it. Then the Packers come out to punt the football, gets blocked, 49ers score, Robbie Gould kicks a field goal, and before we know it, the Packers have fallen out of the playoffs. Nick, this was a team that so many people were expecting to at least win this one. A lot of people were expecting them to get to the Super Bowl, and a good group still were expecting them to win it all. I know the speculation about Aaron Rodgers and just the smoke of what's going to happen there, but before we dive into that, what was your takeaway of this game? And do you think the 49ers have a real chance to win the Super Bowl?
The Packers lost that game by not scoring to close out the first half. They had the opportunity there to go down and at least get the field goal. It was a stunner. I mean, this definitely the most shocking outcome of the weekend, no doubt about that. And the 49ers didn't really play that well, but they played better than the Packers, so kudos to them for getting the win. I don't think the 49ers have a shot to win the Super Bowl. I don't want to do our picks, but I think the Rams are going to win this game this weekend. But kudos to the 49ers here. And Jimmy Garoppolo, he didn't play great, but he's definitely going to make it tough here for the 49ers this offseason to trade him.
Absolutely. And maybe it makes it a little bit easier just with the success that he's having. Maybe they get a little bit more value than they expected initially. But this is really going to be an interesting situation. This game, the 49ers have beaten the Saints twice this season. And I know that we've seen it before where Tampa Bay beat New Orleans after losing twice last year. But the Rams and the 49ers have seemed to have their number, but a lot of people are expecting the Rams to win this one. And I'm not disagreeing. I'm definitely thinking that the Rams win it as well. But 49ers are very much in this game. I think Deebo Samuel is one of the most versatile weapons in football. George Kittle is still one of the best tight ends, especially matching up with the Rams linebackers. I think that's where 49ers need to excel. The run game is going to be interesting because we know how good the defensive line is for the Rams. But on the offensive side of the ball, Stafford looked great. There was a lot of quality play for the Rams, whereas for the 49ers, I'm not sure how the offense is going to get going against this Rams defense. Now, for the 49ers defense, I think that's where this is obviously the identity of this team with guys like Nick Bosa, guys like Fred Warner. But can you continue to make an impact in the passing game? I think it was a solid job that they did against Devontae Adams and this Packers passing attack. But now with with Cooper Kupp, with Odell Beckham Jr., with Van Jefferson, and even Cam Akers able to get some catches out of the backfield, this passing attack is going to be a lot harder to shut down, and the 49ers need to step up in a major way in order to do so.
Yes, it's going to be tough, but, they did a great job stopping Devontae Adams, so we'll see. But again, Adams is one person. Randall Cobb didn't do anything in this game. And overall, just a good defensive game plan, that's for sure.
Yeah, now let's go ahead and jump to what seemed to be the crazier day of what was overall just a fantastic weekend. Tampa Bay versus Los Angeles, a game that Los Angeles had in hand for a large portion of this. Cam Akers fumbles into halftime. Everyone kind of starts thinking, man, is that going to come back to bite them? The Rams, fumble like 12 more times. The Bucs eventually finally capitalize on the mistakes. 27-27. And then Matthew Stafford launches a bomb to Cooper Kupp on the final play of the game to win it and really just completely shatter what people were expecting, because once the Bucs came back, I think so many people were just saying, okay, Bucs are going to win this. Brady did it again. Bucs are going to probably be in the Super Bowl, probably cursing a little bit just out of the anger of Brady doing it. But the Rams answered back when it mattered most, and they escaped this game with a victory. Nick, you've been up and down on the Rams, and I know that this game probably just continued to make you go up and down the entire way. But what is your takeaway from the Rams now heading into the NFC Championship, where they're most likely the favorite, and they really have a chance to be playing in the Super Bowl?
I got to say, Odell Beckham Jr. has totally transformed this team, and that was the signing by them because they would not be here without him. He's been really good. Now, I don't know what Todd Bowles is doing, but in that situation, how are you not playing a cover 2 or a cover 3? I mean, this is all these games basically came down to blown coverage with some big passes. I just don't understand what is going on there, and poor defensive coverage there. Because I think we're all thinking it's going overtime. Bucks are going to win, and unfortunately, we didn't get to see that. That would have made it a really better game because honestly, it wasn't a good game. I mean, it was just a game of 2 runs. One team went up huge. The other team came back and tied it. If they came back for the win or went to overtime, then you say it's a great game. But blown coverage, bad defensive call, and the Rams were able to kick the field goal.
Yeah, it was a horrible call in what seemed to be just kind of foolish. I mean, you're looking at a team that just was so good defensively all year. So I don't want to discredit Bowles' overall quality of work, but this was a terrible call and an opportunity to just kind of get this game to overtime. You play prevent defense. You don't rush everyone and see what you can do to create chaos. I know you're trying to play for the win, but you're not getting the ball back. So you don't try to just get in and sack Stafford and hope of forcing a fumble. I think that's what kind of Bowles was thinking was, man, this team's been fumbling all game. Let's send everyone and see if we can get Stafford to let one loose and then win this game right here. But it's so hard to win the game defensively, especially in a matter of seconds, to where I think you need to play it safe, play prevent defense, and Bulls failed to do that. And I don't think this one play should cost him the opportunity to be a head coach, but I wouldn't be surprised if with this, and just because a lot of teams like to go offensive coordinators now, if Bowles is back in Tampa Bay for another season.
Well, Bowles might be back at Tampa Bay, but I don't think anybody really cares if Tom Brady's not back in Tampa Bay. So what do you think is going to happen there with Brady? And also, I think Gronkowski's squarely tied Brady's. Brady says, I'm done, and that means Gronkowski is going to retire as well. He won't put anybody else, unless, of course, maybe Aaron Rodgers is the Bucs quarterback next year. But what do you think about Brady right now?
Yeah, I think Brady's going to be back. I think the speculation was that he wanted to win one more and could potentially retire. I don't know if he's going to or not, but ultimately I think Brady's going to come back one more year, probably have a little bit of a farewell tour, have a little bit of a final run. And I think the Bucs can retool this roster pretty easily, so I'm not super stressed about that if I'm Tampa Bay. But I think next year, if I had to make an early prediction, Tampa Bay wins Super Bowl, Brady rides out into the sunset, and he finishes with 8 rings. And I think this is a guy that really wants to kind of compete no matter what. He's probably pissed after losing a game like this, despite the fact that he tied it up, despite the fact that, Tampa Bay had a great season, despite the fact that he's already considered by many to be the GOAT. He's probably pissed. So I think he's going to come back for one more chance to go out on top, probably go crazy this offseason, not even do anything besides train just because he's a madman like that. And, I think that assuming the Bucs are healthy, especially on the offensive line, then they have a very good shot of contending next year and possibly even winning it all.
So I think that I said it before. I think earlier on I said the most likely scenario I thought was next season would be Brady's last year. So I think maybe he announces it in September or something, him and Arians. So, I mean, right now, if I had to pick a Super Bowl for next year, I'm definitely going to say I think the Bucs are going to win the Super Bowl and they're going to beat the Bills. So that's what I'll say for now. But I really think Brady's not going to go out unless either he physically can't play anymore or unless he wins the Super Bowl. He's not going to go out in a loss, I don't think.
Yeah, plenty of just stories where Brady just comes off as insane when it comes to being a competitor, to where I can't see him just bowing out right now after a divisional round exit. No shot.
Yeah, well, let's hope not. I mean, it'll be a very sad day when Brady's not in the NFL anymore, because we've seen all the great quarterbacks of our generation have retired now. So except it's him and Rodgers left. That's it. And Rodgers might retire as well soon. So we'll see.
Yeah, Rodgers seems very non-committal as well in terms of being with the Packers. He kind of didn't even commit to necessarily being in the NFL next year. Do you think this is something where we could see Rodgers realistically retire, or is it too hard for you to imagine just yet?
I could see him retiring. I think he's maybe not mentally in it for the grind anymore. He doesn't want to be at training camp really, so we'll see what happens. I think his ideal situation is he's not playing there next year, but if he's going to play there next year, then I think it's definitely going to be his last, because he'll be a free agent after the year. But maybe he decides to retire for a year, so he doesn't have to play that last year, and he comes back the year after. We'll see what happens. I'm sure he'll try to force a trade, but I'm not sure if the Packers would be willing to do that.
Yeah, I think the Packers are in a weird situation because it's hard to give up on a QB of this quality, but at the same time, you've already kind of made your steps towards the future. So plenty of intrigue for these two teams that just got eliminated from the divisional round. Plenty of potential scenarios that could result from this situation. Very exciting stuff to keep an eye on. Hopefully, both are back in the NFL, because the NFL is better with great QBs, and both are definitely great quarterbacks. For the final game that we're going to talk about, Kansas City versus Buffalo. It seemed like Kansas City had it in hand, then Buffalo drove down the field, put up a touchdown, and it felt like Buffalo had it in hand. But apparently 13 seconds is just too long for Patrick Mahomes to be allowed on the field. They get the field goal out of Harrison Butker, send it to overtime, and Mahomes drives down the field and scores a touchdown. Nick, this game was just beautiful quarterback play for each side, some shaky defensive play for each side, and ultimately results in Buffalo being sent home, Kansas City going to the AFC Championship for a third year in a row. Is this Kansas City's race to lose in terms of who's going to win the Super Bowl?
I mean, I guess you could make them the favorites at this point. I really want to see the Bengals will go to the Super Bowl, and that'd be an incredible story. But I really wanted the Bills to win, because it's just like we need some new fresh QBs up there. So if we get Joe Burrow in the Super Bowl, that'd be huge. As far as this game goes, just really bad defense, and it's just kind of crazy there. But Josh Allen just had one of the best postseasons of all time. He only played 2 games, 9 touchdowns. To put this in perspective, Michael, Josh Allen threw for more yards in the final 2.5 minutes of this game than the Giants quarterbacks threw in their final 2.5 games. And the Bills and Chiefs scored 25 points in the last 154 of the game. The Giants scored 26 points in their total in their final 4 games of the season. So, these guys are on a whole other level. I mean, these teams are playing a different sport than 3/4 of the league. So, to me, it's kind of a shame that they ended up, 2-3, because these are the 2 best teams in the AFC, and they should be playing each other next week. But that's the way things broke this season in the regular season.
Absolutely. And, for Buffalo, this is a team that is obviously very loaded. This isn't a team that necessarily needs to consider blowing it up or anything. But what do you think they need to do in this next draft in order to continue to build towards trying to take down Kansas City and trying to make the Super Bowl and win one?
Oh, I guess do the same thing you did last year, and that's draft a defensive end in the first round, because you don't need to do anything offensively. And it'd be great to add Odell Beckham Jr., but you don't really need to do that. I mean, Josh Allen's incredible. The fourth down conversion, I mean, I don't think Mahomes could do that because he's moving around, he's the body to get it down. The 2-point conversion, that scramble was incredible. Ultimately, if you're the Bills, the only thing you got to do in this offseason, what you did last season, is build your team so you can beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. So, I mean, you can get all pro safety in the draft, but that's really not going to matter because look how the Chiefs did it. They were underneath, over the middle in coverage. So, really, I think you just got to keep going defensive line here so you can kind of take some time away from Mahomes and get some pressure on him. That's the only thing you could do.
Yeah, I think adding to this front seven, maybe getting some secondary help. Once Tre'Davious White went down, there were some issues in the secondary that I think, adding a corner could maybe help in terms of just getting depth in that group. Linebacker, I think, still needs some added talent. You could look at offensive tackle. You could look at running back. Kenneth Walker out of Michigan State would be a good fit. I was watching him with some friends last night, and it was just miraculous to see how good his vision was, and adding to that running game and just kind of opening up the opportunities for Josh Allen would be huge. There is a lot of paths, but I think the common strategy for Buffalo, at least from what we saw last year, is that they're going to draft in what they feel is the best way to beat Kansas City. Because that's kind of the ghost they're chasing. And I know that they wouldn't just make this move if they were like, oh, yeah, this helps us beat Kansas City, but it doesn't make us a better football team. Obviously, they're trying to still be a better football team, but there is still plenty of work to do for Buffalo. And I think that would include drafting a linebacker that can really kind of come in and be an instant contributor, and maybe someone that can help slow down the passing attack that is Travis Kelce. If you can get someone who's maybe not just this dominant coverage guy, but someone that can help eliminate Travis Kelce when they match up, that'd be huge. You're looking at someone like maybe a Sterling Weatherford in the mid rounds. That's kind of like a safety linebacker convert. Maybe he could help cover, or some of these other linebackers in this class that have quality speed. Nakobe Dean is someone that's 6 foot, 225 pounds, might be a great fit for what Buffalo likes to do. If they can trade up and maybe get into that range for Kyle Hamilton, I know a lot of people think this is going to be someone that's going top 5, but we've seen safeties fall before, and maybe if he gets out of that top 5 range, Buffalo could package a couple first-round picks in order to get a guy like that onto their defense and really help add him into what is already a very good safety duo. I'm not saying that Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer need to go. I just think adding a Kyle Hamilton and going through safety could maybe help this defense. So I think right now, you got to look at some of the best talents in this class. You got to look at where you truly can assess your roster and improve it. And I think if you can find a way to match up well with the Chiefs while still continuing to improve your roster, there's plenty of potential there for Buffalo, and we could be seeing them in the Super Bowl as quickly as next year.
Yeah, I'm really gonna be curious to see what they're able to do, because right now I would say he's having his second interview today. I think Brian Daboll is most likely going to be the Giants head coach. So curious to see if that impacts them at all defensively.
Yeah, there's some interesting situations with. It sounds like Leslie Frazier, their defensive coordinator, might be heading to the Bears as well. It sounds like the Bears are between Frazier, Caldwell, and I believe Nathaniel Hackett, but it sounds like Hackett's like a third option there. Sounds like Hackett's the guy in Denver as well. Sounds like Byron Leftwich to Jacksonville. Sounds like it could be Brian Daboll to New York. So for Buffalo, Ken Dorsey has done a phenomenal job helping out in the development of Josh Allen. So I think the offense is going to stay pretty similar. I think it's going to continue on a successful play and trail. But ultimately, I think if Leslie Frazier goes, they got to find someone who's going to make sure the ship keeps sailing in the right direction defensively and continue to just invest talent into it.
Yeah. I would assume they would most likely go from within, just promoting for those coordinator roles. But, it's going to be curious. There's going to be some people here left out as far as the head coach search goes. So we'll see. I mean, like Fangio should get a defensive coordinator job somewhere, you would think, right? If he's not going to get a head coach job. If for some reason Brian Flores doesn't get a head coaching job this offseason, is he gonna sit out a year, or does he want to be a defensive coordinator? Somebody would hire him, I would think. So gonna be really interested to see how the coordinator stuff shakes out over the next few weeks.
Absolutely. And before we move on to what would be my next question, I just want to say, like, Sean McDermott is a very good defensive mind, and that's why he's here as a head coach. So I believe Buffalo should be able to continue building on their defense, and that's why I'm not too worried about Leslie Frazier. I think the hiring of Leslie Frazier, and we'll talk head coaches kind of after we finish this playoff talk and stuff, but I don't think it's a good move. Like, yes, he's had his success with the defense, but he's kind of proven already his issues as a head coach when he was with Minnesota. And I just don't feel like Buffalo's defense has been that high a tier to where I'm saying, oh, wow, he's just such a good defensive mind. I need him as my head coach.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens there. I mean, I would have figured Chicago was going to go offensively, but just because of Fields. But I mean, they just had an offensive guy, so maybe that's why they want to look defense. It doesn't really seem like anybody's moving too quickly here on the coaching search, other than the Giants, who just got their GM about 3 days ago. So it's kind of crazy.
Absolutely. And, before we close out playoffs, let me ask you this, Nick. Is the current overtime system flawed, or do you enjoy the, right away opportunity to win the game with one play if the defense doesn't hold up their end?
Well, it's better than it used to be when it would be ending on a field goal on the first possession. I didn't like that. So it kind of sucks that the game came down to a coin flip. I would be for trying to see like a 10-minute overtime, and then whoever has the lead then, is the winner. Be curious to see how the strategy would have implemented. Obviously, if you won the flip, you probably want to defer because you want to have the ball last and kind of eat the clock. So that'd be interesting. I'm not sure we're going to see it get changed, but that'd be something to think about, I think, moving forward here. Have a good time, and then whoever has, the lead at the end of the time is the winner.
Absolutely. The NFL is going to have some pressure to look into changing the rules. I don't know if it will happen, but I think as we get further and further, we're going to see a chance for both teams to get the ball, and I think that'll help out. I truly think, I know that the defense is as important as the offense, but I truly think the offense should get a chance to respond. That's always kind of been how people play, especially, in like the backyard sports or whatever, is always, oh, if they score, you have to score or else you lose. And I like that aspect of it. So I hope for the future of NFL rules, they eventually do change it. But I understand how it is right now, and I'm definitely way happier to see it as it is currently than I ever was seeing it where a team could just win after a field goal, because that was ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm okay with the current system, but I think if both teams hadn't touched the ball once, I think that would be better, especially for the playoffs.
Definitely agree. So now we are moving on from the playoff talk to some head coaching talk. First and foremost, the Denver Broncos, probably the hot one to talk about because it has some revolving connections to the playoffs, and that is the Packers offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett seems to be highly rumored, a lot of smoke to be the next head coach of the Denver Broncos. Had a success in Jacksonville, was eventually fired. A lot of that blamed on Blake Bortles. Goes to Green Bay, finds success with Aaron Rodgers, probably one of the easier tasks. So there's a little bit of mixed emotion on Hackett, but for the Broncos, it seems like he's going to be their guy. There's been rumors of Aaron Rodgers to Denver since, last year. So this is something that makes a lot of sense if, they want to continue that. Do you think that Hackett is the right hire? And do you think that it is a sign of things to come for the Rodgers to Denver era?
I mean, I would think that's their mindset, which is let's get him in here. Aaron's familiar with him. Aaron don't want to come here. But if that doesn't work out, I don't know about this hire. I personally stay away from any sort of offensive coordinator who is either Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees, because I think those quarterbacks are the reason why those offensive guys look so great. And just look at Ben McAdoo, for example. He was attached to Rodgers, ultimately ends up being the head coach. Didn't work out. So I'd be very weary about a hire of that ilk.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think Hackett has proven some solid stuff in terms of overachieving when he was at Jacksonville, where there's a little bit more confidence in that regard, but still very much in question if I would make the move for him. I think guys like Brian Dabble, guys like Brian Flores are guys that I'm probably leaning on as the higher candidates, Eric Bieniemy even, but right now it seems like those three guys that have been rumored heavily for a lot of places are maybe kind of getting passed over again, and then Flores may have to wait a year. We'll see what happens, especially with like the Houston job where Flores is still kind of rumored, but there's been some weird names. Moving on from Hackett at Denver, one name that is probably the worst one that I've heard about is Miami being rumored to be the team that's going to hire Vance Joseph as their head coach. Vance Joseph has failed already as a head coach in Denver. Didn't even have that great of an offense with Arizona, or defense with Arizona, and is now being speculated as the likely head coach for Miami. Nick, I'm trying to make sense of this. I don't know if you can even make sense of it, but what's your thoughts on this? And do you think that this is possibly a good hire, or do you agree with me where it's confusing if it were to be the hire that Miami makes?
It seems like the Miami front office is just in disarray right now, and I don't think I want to come into this job because you're a sitting duck after 1 year if the GM's out, if Ross decides to end it. So I don't know. Maybe that's the reason why you're seeing the Vance Joseph here, is because the bigger names, they want some job security, and they're you might as well hire Joe Judge if you're going to hire Vance Joseph and see what he can do, because he had no talent around him. So Vance Joseph, at least in Denver, had like some big time players. So I don't know. It seems like if you're going from Flores to Vance Joseph, kind of seems like a step back.
Yeah, and I even said I understand the firing of Flores in some regard, just because you're invested in your QB, you're invested into it being the future, and Flores kind of burned that bridge with his active pursuit of Watson. But it can't mean that you hire a guy like Joseph, who has not even been away from the head coaching position very long, hasn't really inspired me to think that he's necessarily changed. I don't get it. I don't think it's the right move. I think if I'm Miami, the guys I'm looking for are a Kevin O'Connell type, a Mike McDaniel type, where you can kind of establish your quick game, your run game, and really kind of get into this offensive rhythm that is really ultimately what I think Miami is best suited for, especially with the overall questions of Tua. I think that's the system that he would fit in best, that type of passing attack. So that's where I would go if I were Miami. But right now, they seem set on Vance Joseph. I don't know if it's necessarily true. There's been a lot of speculation in a lot of different ways, so there's no guarantees. But if this is the hire that they make, then I think that would be at the bottom of my rankings for, best hires to worst.
The only defensive coordinator that I would consider like a good hire right now at any of these jobs is Steve Spagnuolo, because his defenses are always great. Obviously not too good yesterday, but multiple Super Bowl wins. You know, he had a really bad Rams team when he was the head coach. But he has a track record that would say to me, like, okay, this guy is worthy of getting a second chance. I mean, he's accomplished more than some other guys. But I think right now, I would expect most of these hires to be offensive minded. So we'll see. But it looks like Jared Mayo is getting a lot of attention across the league, Patriots linebacker coach. So I guess a lot of people are hoping for the next Mike Vrabel with him.
Yeah, Gerard Mayo seems like someone that's getting attention. I think the mindset with him is a lot of these Patriots coaches are fine schematically, but the issue is they come in with this energy that doesn't really bring in a locker room very well unless you win, and it's hard to turn around a program or an organization. For Gerard Mayo, he's a little bit more of a player's coach, and I think that's where the approach would kind of be appreciated. So that's why teams are very actively looking into what he can offer as a head coach. I think he needs a little bit more seasoning, still a little bit green in terms of how long he's been a coach, but we'll see. For Miami, I just don't get it. I really don't think that Joseph is the guy. And, you know, in terms of defense coordinators, I do like, I think Matt Eberflus is a good one out of Indianapolis. He's done well in terms of just getting great production, even out of guys that a lot of people viewed as mid-round talents. And I think that's where I really kind of be inspired. I'm like, okay, this is someone who's consistently overachieving, even when the roster and overall investment into his unit maybe doesn't match up with the production that they've been able to put forward. And that's what Indianapolis's defense has been able to do. So a guy like that, you know, I'd be optimistic about when it comes to hiring. But with a guy like Vance Joseph, they brought in a lot of talent into this defense, and there were still a lot of issues, especially as guys like J.J. Watt went down. You got to find ways to overcome those injuries. And I feel like when the top of the ship lost a few pieces, the entire thing started to sink. So it was a big issue for the Cardinals, and that's why if they were to hire Vance Joseph, that would be just a horrible hire in my book. And, you know, maybe I'd be wrong. I'd love to be wrong because good coaches are better for the league, but I don't buy into the Joseph hype train.
I think right now, every single vacancy, the number one guy on your list should be Sean Payton. If he's not looking to do this rebuild-ish type of thing with the Saints, then you should go get Sean Payton. I think that's your best bet.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the Sean Payton situation truly is like. I've heard the rumors, obviously, but I don't know what's really going to come of it. But if he is willing to leave New Orleans, I'm really offering him anything he wants. I'm saying, look, you want to be the head coach and GM? Feel free. You can come in here, pick your QB, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
We want you here. Especially if you're a team like Las Vegas, where you just made the playoffs and you feel like there's a lot left on the roster, and you think that you can kind of make that next jump, and you have insane teams to compete against. I mean, a guy like Sean Payton has to be extremely enticing. So, you know, if you are a team that really thinks that you're a few pieces away from winning, a guy like Sean Payton, who has proven to be a winner, proven to, you know, succeed even when situations are not good, like this year, where he's dealing with all these QBs after Winston went down and still putting together a pretty solid record. Sean Payton is the guy to have. And so if I'm a team, I'm doing whatever I can to bring Sean Payton into my organization as head coach, but I don't know if I fully buy that he's willing to leave.
I think you have to trade for him, so that's one thing. But this is where I think would be a great fit, but I don't see this happening. If he's like, well, like I'm done here and you can get him, the Chargers should get Sean Payton. He'd make a huge difference. I mean, we saw Staley lose them some games this year. It's not fair to him to get fired after a year, but if you had Sean Payton there with Justin Herbert, I mean, this is a Super Bowl contender.
Let me pitch one option for you. Seattle, if Pete Carroll, you know, there's been speculation that he could be done any day. There's been talks that he would maybe mutually part ways. If Sean Payton becomes available, if you're Seattle, do you kind of say, look, you know, you've done well for us. We really appreciate everything. let's mutually part ways, and we want to go get Sean Payton so that we can keep Russ in Seattle.
For Peyton's perspective, he has to know that Wilson's going to stay and remain on. So, but I don't know. I feel like Seattle, their roster is a step back from the Saints roster. So maybe Peyton says, let's try to get Russell Wilson to New Orleans. Because I think it comes down to quarterback with the Saints. I mean, they would have been a playoff team this year if they had a little more consistency at quarterback. I know that injuries, but Trevor Siemian is probably not going to cut it for you most years.
Yeah, and I think the big issue for the Saints is they pushed off so much money in order to be a contender for so many years that the flexibility just continues to get a little bit less and less. And you can make space, and you can probably find a way to keep Winston, but each year you're kind of running into this issue of, okay, we probably got to part ways with another very good player. It's going to be Armstead this year, maybe Marcus Williamson. There's pieces that are going to keep falling, and eventually, as strongly as you can manage the cap and manipulate it and push everything back, eventually you got to go into that dark age. And that's where New Orleans kind of runs into that issue is they've pushed off money for so long that they're losing these pieces, and you aren't going to consistently draft well enough to where you're just finally, never having the issue of needing the money because you're just drafting these third, fourth round players and they're great contributors right away. But New Orleans has done a good job of kind of pushing all their dirty clothes into the closet, but eventually they have to do the laundry.
Yeah, and if they lose Peyton, they're gonna collapse for the next year or two. They'll totally go into the tank.
Absolutely, and that's going to be a team that, if they lose Peyton, I think they're going to try to capitalize on just trading almost everyone because the team already has some question marks. I think you're losing a lot of pieces and a lot of appeal without Sean Payton. So it becomes this thing of, okay, well now either we run it back by promoting Pete Carmichael the head coach or we rebuild this thing. And maybe they still promote Carmichael, but they would probably try to trade away a lot of pieces and embrace the dead cap for the next 2-3 years until they can really kind of get back into
I hate the
freedom.
fact that if you trade somebody, it goes against the dead cap. To me, it's one of the dumbest rules because it's makes no sense. But
I think there should be rules in place to where you can trade parts of the cap. Like if you're willing to take Deshaun Watson, that's great, but you also need to take part of his cap hit because we don't want to be stuck with that.
I understand dead cap if you release a player, but to trade him, you should be trading everything away. So that's interesting. What do you think the Saints can get for Alvin Kamara in a trade?
That's tough because running backs are such a weird situation in this league. I think he's someone that at the very least would get an early second, but I assume there would be a team out there that's saying, if we can add Kamara to our backfield, that's huge and we need that. And so they'd be willing to give a first if they feel like that is pushing them into that.
Future New York Jet, Alvin Kamara?
Possibly. I think, just real quick, just taking a glance at some of the teams, obviously a team like Tampa Bay would love to have a guy like that. I don't know if they can necessarily fit it into their budget.
Fournette looked good yesterday, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Arizona, you'd fit perfectly into what they try to do with the running backs, especially if they're able to keep James Conner in that backfield as well. Nice 1-2 punch. I think Kansas City would be a team that you'd have to consider because Clyde Edwards-Helaire isn't necessarily going to.
Yeah, I don't know if they could fit him in with the cap.
Keep you from getting someone. Yeah, they've also kind of done this situation where they've pushed off a lot of money, so they could probably push off more and just make it to where eventually they'll.
Ultimately, it's going to be bad. If he wins Super Bowls, it doesn't matter. But Mahomes is making $50 million. Kelsey's making $30.
Yeah,
Hill's going to get paid. It's most of your team is tied up in 3 guys, so eventually it's going to hurt in other spots.
Absolutely, and maybe another team that could entertain the idea is Philadelphia. I think Miles Sanders is pretty good, but if you could add in Alvin Kamara in that situation where they need wide receiver help, where they need just so many running backs because they love those types of talents and they focus so much on running, you want your QB to work out in Jalen Hurts. You have 3 first-round picks. Philadelphia could be a team that'd be willing to entertain it.
Phillies gotta do something this offseason, we would think, to kind of make some sort of improvements.
Absolutely. Well, that is all we have for you here on Destination Draft Day. Starting on Friday, we pushed off another episode, but the blueprints will officially be happening. I promise you. So I apologize if anyone is tuning in hopes of that. We are very excited for it. We got more NFL draft talk coming as the draft season sort of ramps up. We got playoff talk. We'll be giving you our predictions for the championship games. We're very excited for it. We hope you guys have a great week. Until then, though, take care, and we'll see you. Peace.